Good morning, everyone. My name is Kavita Gupta, and I'm a teacher in the district. In today's advisory, we are going to explore the impact that media has on us, and we are going to look at diversifying our media. I am really excited for this advisory because I want myself to see how my media influences me. And whether we know it or not, we are all impacted by the media we consume. And when I say media, we are not only talking about social media, but we are also talking about print media, things you read like books or online content, or we are talking about uh, things you watch, right? So, are you ready? So before we dive in, can you please take a minute to go to Schoology, open advisory presentation, so that'll make a copy for you to type in as we go along the slides today. Okay, do you have your own copy of the presentation? Let's go. Some of you may recall a previous advisory where we talked about a pyramid of hate. And this pyramid of hate showed us that unchecked biases and biased actions lead towards discrimination. By being intentional and reflective about the media consumption, and by using diverse media, we can interrupt the stereotypes and this bias. Unconscious bias and racism not only impact the way we view and treat others, but it also impacts the way we view us.
Hi, I'm Viviana Torres. I'm also a teacher in this district. As Kavina pointed out, since the media influences the way we view others and the way we view ourselves, we want to take some time to explore what it is that we're looking at now so that we can be more intentional in the future. If you look on your slide or your slides, you'll notice that there's an activity that we want you to do to explore your social media use. So you want to start by thinking about, what do you look at the most often? If Instagram and TikTok are your apps of choice where you're spending more of your time, you can click here. If you're more of a book reader, then you can click on what I read. And if you watch TV, whether that's actual cable television, what's on the major networks, or what's on streaming platforms, you would click on what I watch. When you click, what it's going to do is it's going to take you to a sample or a model to help you see how you might answer some of the questions depending on what you're looking at. If you feel like you understand what you're supposed to do, click here to advance, and it'll take you to a blank slide for the type of media that you're exploring so that you can answer those questions on your own. So what we want you to do right now is, on your own, we want you to take 7 minutes to explore what you look at and think about, what patterns do you notice and what might you learn about yourself, starting now. Okay. Now that you've had a chance to take a look at um, what you read, what you watch, or what you see on social media, we want you to talk about what you noticed or what you discovered with a partner. So you're going to have 1 minute per person to finish the sentence for one or both of these and to have a discussion. Something I noticed in my exploration is, or something I am wondering about is. You have 2 minutes, 1 minute per partner, starting now.
All right, everyone. Hopefully, you had a nice and thought-provoking conversation with your partner. And now let's read a claim made by Anti-Defamation League. And I'll read out loud as you process it silently. They write, representation of certain identity groups in the media and elsewhere is often minimal or non-existent, particularly for those in marginalized groups. Even when there is visibility, sometimes these portrayals are one-dimensional, stereotypical, or negative. This deficiency contributes to a lack of understanding of and empathy for different people. It can contribute to our biases, both implicit and explicit. And now, if you recall from your previous advisory, we talked about explicit biases a little bit with hate pyramid. And explicit biases are those that we are aware of. These are above the surface. Then there are implicit biases that are below the surface. These are unconscious biases that we are not aware of. And if left unchecked, implicit biases may lead to biased attitudes that can result in discrimination, as shown by this pyramid of hate. And this point is also shown in this video that you'll be watching here.
Implicit bias.
Implicit bias.
2016 was the year that implicit bias went somewhat mainstream.
Yeah, so when Hillary Clinton mentioned implicit bias in the debates, our phones started blowing up, all our friends started emailing us about it.
But what is implicit bias? Implicit biases are basically thought processes that happen without you even knowing it. Little mental shortcuts that hold judgments you might not agree with. And sometimes the shortcuts are based on race. First, some clarity. Saying someone has an implicit bias is different from calling someone a racist.
The word racist is a highly loaded term, right, here in American society. A lot of times when people are using it, they're thinking of the kind of old-fashioned Ku Klux Klan style racist.
But implicit bias isn't anywhere near that, explicit.
Implicit bias is something that comes out of ordinary mental functioning, out of how the mind normally works.
We've all grown up in a culture with media images, news images, conversations we heard at home, our education. Think of that as a fog we've been breathing our whole life. We'd never even realized it, what we were taking in.
And that fog causes associations that lead to biases.
I somehow know that if you say peanut butter, I'm going to say jelly. That's an association that's been ingrained in me because throughout my life, peanut butter and jelly are together. And in many forms of media, there's an over-representation of Black men and violent crime being paired together.
And because of that, I actually deep down inside have been taught that Black men are violent and aggressive and not to be trusted, that they're criminals, that they're thugs.
With all those associations, I'm not trying to let us off the hook, but in some ways, none of us stood a chance.
Starting today, we'll post.
All right. So as it was mentioned,
Implicit bias.
Implicit bias.
Implicit bias.
2016 was the year that implicit
sorry. As it was mentioned, both in the video and in the quote before, when we look at the media, whether it's social media, what we read or what we see on TV, there isn't always a lot of representation for people who are, they use the word marginalized. It's also people who've been historically oppressed or excluded, people of color, women, people with disabilities, for example. And what this video just showed us is that when there are images of them, sometimes there are stereotypes that go along with them. And the result is that because of what we see, we create these biases in our brain. What we want to do right now, since we're trying to interrupt these biases, is to go back to what we did on slides 8, 9, or 10, when you looked at the media that you currently are spending time consuming. And we want you to think about what patterns, if any, did I notice about the creators of the media or the characters or individuals that are in it. As a hint, think about what ways the people that you're looking at are like you or unlike you, especially in regards to your identity, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, etc. So we're going to ask you to do this on your own for 2 minutes, starting now. All right. So now that you've had a chance to look for patterns, what I want you to do is to think back to what the video said. It said, media images are like a fog. It's around us. We're breathing it in all the time without even thinking about it. And that fog creates associations in our brains. So now we want to think about what associations might I be making in my brain based on the media that I read, watch, and listen to. So now that I have my patterns, what might be those biases, implicit or explicit, that are being created with those associations in my brain? You're going to have 3 minutes to work on this on your own, starting now. All right. So now that we know that implicit biases are being created, and the fact that they are implicit means they are unconscious, we don't even know that they're happening. So even if we're reflecting or thinking really hard about these associations, we might still not know what those things are that are going on in our brain. So what can we do about it? The good news is that research shows that there are steps that we can take. Today, we're going to focus on the first 2 things that research says we can do to interrupt implicit bias. So even if we don't know it's happening, we can still interrupt it. The first thing that we can do is to look for images and stories that counter common stereotypes. So instead of just watching whatever's on or whatever the social media like shows to you, you can go out and look specifically for stories and images that will counter these common stereotypes. And the second thing that you can do is you can see and interact with people who challenge common stereotypes as well. So first you can look for them, find images, look for their stories, and then you can also interact with them, which is something that you can also do on social media. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we might do that.
right, so let's talk about diversifying our media. But first, I just wanted to clarify diversification of media means that we seek resources and news and images that are like us, as well as the ones that are different from us. It is important to seek resources that are like us, especially if we belong to the groups that are typically underrepresented in media. And by listening to stories of people who are unlike you, or by watching images and looking at stories of people who are different than you, you'll be able to build perspective from others. How are they feeling? And so on. And when we interact with people who might be different from us, it helps build empathy and understanding, which are necessary first steps towards a larger action of addressing racism. So let's see how we can do it. Okay. Now, remember, you will choose one of the three to diversify today because our time is limited, but eventually you might want to diversify all media consumption. So choose either your social media or your reading list or your watch list. And then the next three slides take you one by one on how to diversify each of them. But today, for our time purposes, you'll choose only one of the three. So let's say you chose social media to diversify. Then this slide tells you how to diversify social media. You can follow different accounts. You can use different kind of hashtags. Or you can look at influencers or social media people who are like you or different from you. If you are looking to diversify what you read, using either We Need Diverse Books or Electric Lit or social justice books, you can come up with more diverse books. I can show you right now because we're having a little trouble toggling, but I just researched, I put a search for best women's book for 2021 on Amazon and Electric Lit. And on Amazon, the hits I got were mostly from dominant culture perspective. But when I did the same search with Electric Lit, I got diversity of authors. So you might want to use one of those to get more diverse opinions in your reading list. And then for your watch list, you can look at shows or movies that cast diverse members or that are produced by diverse audience. All right, I am excited for us to diversify our media now in next 7 minutes.
We know you still have a little bit of work time left, but I wanted to take a moment to show you one other option that you might have when you are working on diversifying your social media. One of the things that we know is that, for example, I have some shows and some books that when I read them or watch them, I say, wow, this is my experience. It perfectly describes what it was like for this part of me in my life. And I might want to share some of those. And you might want to look for stories about what other people say are things that are authentic to their life experience as well. So we've started an Instagram account called FUHSD.advisory. We invite you to tag us if you make any posts where you find new accounts to follow on social media or books to read, or if there's new TV shows that were not on the list that you suggest that we watch, feel free to tag us there. You can also follow the account as we're going to continue to share some options and ideas for accounts you might follow and other ways to diversify your feed, your book list, or your watch list. We might also use it for future advisories to get information on the other things that we're learning about as a district. Please continue to work until the bell rings. Thank you.